Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining the May 2023 edition of the Windows in the Cloud Ask Microsoft Anything. Thanks for joining wherever you are, just like you can your cloud PC. I'm joined by an amazing cast today. Maybe some familiar faces, maybe some new. But just as a reminder, I'm Christian Montoya. I'm a PM lead on the Windows 365 and Azure Virtual Desktop team for graphics, protocol, and transport. Uh, David, how about you go next? Quick intro for yourself.
Hi, folks. My name is David Bélanger. I'm also one of the program managers on the Windows 365 and Azure Virtual Desktop team. These days, primarily focusing on some of our identity and authentication investments.
Yeah, we'll probably dive into that, David. So be ready for some questions.
Sounds good.
And Donna, do you want to go?
Sure. So I'm Donna Ryan. I'm a senior PM on our WCX CAT team. So I don't own features. I'm primarily working with customers to find out what they need from the service to help gather insights, gather that feedback, and help compile it so we can improve our services.
Thanks. Thank you, Donna. And Femi?
You're welcome.
Sure, thanks. My name is Femi Adebayo. I'm a feature PM on the Windows 365 Azure desktop team. My main responsibility is responsible for all enterprise network. That includes Azure Network Connection, Microsoft Hosted Network, and any network-related features that has to do with Windows 365 and AVD.
Perfect. Yeah, I think there's some stuff for you this week as well. So I might ask you some questions, Femi. As
Sure.
a side note, you're getting a lot of sunlight. I'm really jealous. It's kind of cloudy over here. So soak that in, Femi. So yeah, as we get started today, I do want to call out some announcements, what's new since the last time that we all gathered here together last month. But one of the awesome things for Windows 365, if you check out our What's New page, is we now support the South Africa North region for Azure and also the Sweden Central region. Slowly expanding all those regions that you can deploy your cloud PCs. So hopefully that is more convenient for folks that are deploying their environments globally. Other areas of investment were in our end user experiences. So in our web client, we have keyboard shortcut redirection. So I don't know if you've noticed, but whenever you go to the web client, you alt tab, you get switched to apps and things locally. But with the new redirection, if you full screen it, you're actually able to use alt tab, but within the cloud PC. So that's really cool. So that way the local device doesn't just take the tabs. So that was really cool improvement. Please go try it out, especially if you love the web client. In terms of the Windows 365 app, we do now support the pin to taskbar feature. If you go through the Windows 365 app, hit the dots, you should be able to pin a taskbar, and you can just immediately launch your cloud PC without having to go back into the app. So that's also very, very exciting. And we want to see if that meets your needs. So definitely give us feedback there. And lastly, we made updates to Windows 365 Government and added additional reminders for you to correctly link your Azure Commercial and Azure Government tenants if you're going to be using those environments. So that was a new update, trying to make it easier for you. Call that out so that way there's less confusion about how to leverage your existing resources. So those, I think, are the biggest things. Actually, Femi, I think there was one more. Wasn't there an update to the FQDN tags or the Azure service tags? Can you talk about that a little bit?
Sure. So we made an update to allow basically what we call FQDN tags, and basically it's a well-known Microsoft service where we're able to set a bunch of certain rules to allow, require the network traffic through the firewall. So this are required endpoints that we want customers to open up and list when they are using their specific VNet. So basically, in short, what it does is that it just helps you automate the rule set that you will need to use an Azure network connection for us, which we have an ANC, and it also helps you direct traffic via your firewall. So it's just a way to really process of having to enter a list of URLs that we have that require you to have connectivity to your cloud PC.
Right, because I remember that we used to have a list of those specific FQDNs. So is this more of a substitution of you get to take out most of those and you can just use the FQDN tags?
Yes. So what we did was that we heard from customers who were like, I think we have close to almost 20 between 20 and 25 list of URLs you have to list, right, for separate separate reasons. And what we did was that we wanted to look for a way to really automate the process. So it's really like a substitute. Instead of having to list all the required URLs, you just have this FQDN tag that compasses of all the required URLs that you need to be able to allow traffic via VNet to a service. So basically just automates seamless the process, and you don't have to remember if a URL changes. We undo all the updates for you. You don't have to worry about that. We take the responsibility of making sure URLs are updated and you can actually allow that traffic via VNet.
Perfect. Yeah, and Donna, maybe you have more information. How how complex are the environments that you see? Like, is this something that that you would see customers using to reduce the complications?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, that list of FQDNs is scary. And then there's sister lists that have here's the things that are required from AVD. So any improvement that we're making to that is welcome from our customers. So yeah, when I saw that announcement that was coming out, I was absolutely thrilled. I know that's definitely going to make a quality of life improvement for admins trying to set that up.
Yeah,
Windows 365. Yeah.
That's good to hear. And I guess one last question, because Donna, you're mentioning like the Azure AD URLs and whatnot. So maybe Femi, are the FQDN tags, are they only for the Azure Virtual Desktop and Windows 365 endpoints, or are there other services that we Windows 365 uses that also have an FQDN tag?
Yes. So today you have to have intern, Windows 365, of course. Then you have to have Azure Virtual Desktop, which we require as part of the URLs that we need to allow traffic to our network. So basically, yes. So it covers intern, Windows 365. It also covers AVD. Then we introduced another one for Citrix. So Citrix is kind of the third-party partners integrations we have. So we also have a Citrix FQDN tag for folks that use Citrix that want to leverage Citrix. We have that too. So you can also use Citrix FQDN tags.
Perfect. Wow. Looks like we're trying to take care of that for customers. I love it.
Yes.
I love it. Okay, cool. So we do have a question coming in from Jolson. Hello, team. In our environment, we assign users the lowest Cloud PC SKU possible and upsize ad hoc. However, the licensing for Frontline works a bit differently and we can't resize it. Is this because we only bought one set of licenses, or is resizing in Frontline not possible? Donna, I might defer to you here.
Okay, no, that's fine. So I think the issue that our person here is encountering is because we really haven't set out licenses SKUs for purchase yet. All the licenses that are currently out there are all trial licenses, and they're set at one SKU. It's a 2x8 by 256, I believe. So in order to resize, you need to have the base license that you currently have and the next one. And since we don't have other licenses available, resizing isn't going to work. And so when we go GA and we have a whole suite of licenses available for purchase, resizing should be available.
Yeah, I think I know that we are in the preview timeframe. I know that do you know if we're still accepting nominations? I know we got a lot of interest, which was nice.
We absolutely are. We're still taking nominations or signups. We've got a form. If I can find the link to if somebody behind the scene doesn't have that AKAMS link. That's going to go to an office form. So what makes Frontline different than most of our? There you go. There it is. Go ahead and sign up on. Other way. We're there. Anyway, what makes Frontline unique in the public preview realm is that typically with a public preview, we enable the feature, we put the label on it that says preview, and then users can use it. But Frontline requires a specific license type. And because there's a license, there are terms and conditions that come with licensing. So that's why we can't just send out codes to everybody. We need to actually have you go through the sign up process and accept the terms. Further, if anybody that's going through the sign up process is working with a GBP, a CETS, a CAT PM, in question 9, we built in a text box so you could list your Microsoft contact. So if you are working directly with somebody of the title like I have mentioned before, make sure to put their name in there. Where that allows us to know that you're working with somebody, and it also allows us to notify that Microsoft representative that you indeed have gotten your licenses, and allows them to follow up, answer questions, provide guidance, that kind of stuff. So
Right.
go
Yeah.
sign up.
Yeah.
Frontline's awesome.
Yeah. It is awesome. Yeah. And that helps. I think what you're saying, it helps us because then we can make sure that you get all the latest information. If there's any changes, we can at least have a point of contact for you. So that's good.
Yep.
Um,
Mhm.
the one last thing on the resize I want to just check in on is we'll definitely I'll kind of poke my peers around a little bit on the resize, just because as Donna mentioned, the whole licensing thing is different between Frontline and the regular Windows 365 Enterprise. And so I'll poke around a bit, but I think that's a great question on the resize. If it becomes available whenever we do fully release Frontline, we'll we'll get back to you on resize and if there's any challenges or caveats. But I really appreciate the question. And so, David, I have a question for you. Is how's the single sign-on preview going for Windows 365 for the Azure AD Join Cloud PCs?
That's going well. For those that aren't as familiar with single sign-on, we already have it available today for Windows 365 Azure AD Join VMs for Windows 365 Enterprise. So that preview is live. So certainly somewhere you can go and test it out. And if you're also using Azure Virtual Desktop, we also have the single sign-on available there also. We're hard at work on bringing the functionality to the hybrid Azure AD Join VMs for Windows 365 Enterprise, and we hope to have that available in a public preview in the upcoming few months as we continue our march towards generally available later this year.
Perfect. Yeah. What, just for folks listening, what's the primary difference between like Azure AD Join VMs or Cloud PCs and then the hybrid Azure AD Join Cloud PCs? Like, are there additional requirements that are that you need for a hybrid Azure AD Join setup?
Yeah, so that's a good thing to call out, Christian. So while the protocol will work for both hybrid Azure AD Join VM and full Azure AD Join VMs, for the connection to fully function, there are some key nuances that are good to know about. The first part is for the ability to connect to a hybrid Azure AD Join VMs, because the VM is also joined to Active Directory. And we need to be able to properly set up the user account with Kerberos and everything else. You do need to go and create a Kerberos server object in your environment. So there's a couple commands you can go run on your domain controller, and that will enable essentially your Active Directory to trust Azure AD and be able to issue the right certificates and the right kind of tokens for the user to complete the connection. And that is required for the user to be able to sign into a hybrid Azure AD Join device using the new single sign-on protocol. That Kerberos server object is not needed to connect to an Azure AD Join VMs, but we still recommend creating that Kerberos server object if your environment has some on-premise like our legacy Kerberos application. So for example, if your users will want to access on-premises SMB shares, for example, you would normally want to go still create that Kerberos server object to provide a single sign-on experience from that session host into those network share without the users being prompted for credentials. And from a high level, that is the kind of the key difference that we have available that you have to be kind of mindful of. Obviously, we always recommend before enabling single sign-on to go and review and ensure you've set up proper CA conditional access and multi-factor authentication policies to match the requirements of your organization. Because while we provide a great single sign-on experience, there may be some cases where you do want to actively re-prompt the users for credential once in a while, whether that's once an hour or once a day or whatever your environment is comfortable with.
Right. Yeah, that's a lot of good information. And actually, that reminds me, because I think we did put those steps for the Azure D Kerberos object. I think that is in the single sign-on identity document that we have in our doc site. It actually does remind me of a customer that we had who hadn't set that up yet, and then we're curious on when they're accessing, file share or an on-premise app, where they kept getting pinged for credentials for AD Active Directory credentials, and it's because they hadn't set that up. So that's a good reminder. For folks who are very much looking for that hybrid join, it sounds like, David, the recommendation is make sure you set up that Kerberos object, and you can test that today with the Azure D Join Cloud PCs. And then when it does become available, then you should be set for your hybrid join Cloud PCs.
Absolutely. And we certainly encourage folks, if you're using Azure AD Join VMs today, please give it a try. And certainly look forward to the hybrid Azure AD Join support. And we'd love to get your feedback. Again, we want to make sure everyone has a great experience when we officially declare general availability. And the only way to do that is make sure we get your help in testing the feature and providing feedback where you can.
Awesome. Okay. Thanks, David. Yeah, I'm glad that I asked you, because I want to make sure that everyone's aware that we care about single sign-on. We're still we're working on it. You're gonna get it soon.
Yes.
All right. Let's see. I do have another question from Jason. So, looking to set up a browser in kiosk mode that opens directly and only to Windows 365.microsoft.com. Thereby locking the user to the cloud PC and not allowing generalized browsing from the terminal machine. In testing, it became obvious that other URLs besides Windows 365.microsoft.com had to be added to the allow list in the Intune policy. So what we're looking for is a definitive list of URLs domains that need to be accessible in running a kiosk mode browser. Is that published anywhere, or do they have to be pieced together via trial and error from the various articles on Azure Virtual Desktop? So that's a great question, because it's kiosk mode. Donna, do you have info here?
I do have some, not so much to the specific ask of looking for a list. That one I could kind of dig up, but I know from my experience of trying to work with kiosk mode and Windows 365 that kiosk mode, it works, but there was some caveats. Some parts worked better in 10, some parts worked better in 11. I think what would be a better use case or a better solution from this is, instead of trying to lock it down with kiosk mode, is instead to leverage the soon upcoming feature boot to cloud, which gives you that kiosk functionality where end users can only access what you're provisioning. But in this case, the end user, when they go ahead and log in at the logon screen, it directly connects them to the cloud PC. And so there's no access to the desktop. There's nothing there that the end user can get into. So it gives you that kiosk mode functionality, but is going to be much easier to set up than trying to wrangle kiosk mode. And so I know that feature is upcoming soon.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, because I remember, I feel like it was this time last year when we announced all of the upcoming investments that we wanted to make Windows 365, really tightly integrated with Windows. So I think it was this time last year when we talked about Windows 365 boot, well, even the app itself, and then Windows 365 switch and the offline capabilities. So I know that we're still working on that. Boot is still in the works, and might be a good use case. Well, sounds like the use case for their scenario. I guess for Jason, if you're online, I'm curious on if you are using a Windows device, because with the Windows 365 app, Donna, because I don't know as much about Kiosk mode and Intune, but if you use the Windows 365 app, is that another avenue for Kiosk mode?
What you would end up having to do is you would, and it's been a while since I've messed with this, but I know at least with multi-app, you can define which apps are usable, and so that may actually be a way to solve this.
Yeah, because I feel like on the tech community channel, I have a feeling someone actually did post a step-by-step guide to deploying the scenario via Kiosk mode. And that might
Okay.
be something we have to dig up. So Jason, if you're online, you can check the tech community, and if you find it there, then perfect. If not, we'll also try to see if we can find it. But I think someone also did do a write-up on this. So you might be in good company and your community might have already helped you out. But yeah, thanks for the help, Donna. I know the basics of Intune. I haven't really dived in deep into all of it, so I'm always a little murky on that stuff.
I know my background was much more into configuration manager, so if you want to go down that route,
open up that stuff. Yeah, because you were
giant
at
can of worms.
Yeah, you were at MMS, weren't you?
I was at MMS. Yep, that was a lot of fun. MMS is always a good time. There's the biggest challenge you have at going to MMS is all of the sessions are so high quality that you frequently run into conflicting time schedules. So then you really have to determine which session you want to sit in on. It also provides you a very a unique opportunity as an attendee because there's lots of folks from Microsoft there, mostly from the Intune and ConfigMan teams. But Windows 365 has been making a showing. Last year it was just me. This year it was me and Brinkoff. So doubled our showing. The interest into Windows 365 generally also doubled. I noticed the amount of attendees we had in the Windows 365 session was twice as much as we had last year. So lots of good interest, but MMS has their event in Miami coming up in October. Of course, there's always at Mall of America every year. So if you haven't gone, really make that effort. It can be like a life-changing one. Like I went there, and then that kind of helped me get on my MVP path, which led me to being a Microsoft employee. Your results may vary, but
I think the only other question I have is, does MMS have to be hosted in a place that starts with M? Like, does it have to be Minnesota, and does it have to be Miami?
It does not. We had in 2019, our fall one was in New Orleans, so that was jazz.
Okay.
And then I think the first fall one they did, I think it was like in Tucson. I know it was in Phoenix. So no, it doesn't have to have the M. It just happens to work out that way more often than not.
Sounds good. Yeah, thanks for being there, and for folks that are listening, it's a great experience. Donna can attest to it. So I guess if you have any questions, definitely let us know. Windows 365 is just more and more, like we were mentioning, integrated with Windows, being delivered through Intune. So you'll see us pop up a bit more in your other solutions. Mm-hmm. Okay, back to the questions. Is there any plan to add precise options on RDP redirection functions? For example, rather than blocking Clipboard entirely, disallow Clipboard redirection from Cloud PC to local PC only. So that is a great question. David, I know within your team, I think there is some work on this. Is there anything? Because I think we identified the work, but I don't know if you have any info here of just directionally where we're trying to go.
But Christian, I think the question is about if there's a way to control if it's kind of two-way or one-way clipboard redirection, right?
Yeah, because it says like from Cloud PC, basically allow Cloud PC to local PC only, but not the reverse.
Yeah, so there's a couple features that we're working on in general around this space. So the first one, which you're asking about, is we are doing some work to enable more granular control over clipboard redirections, to allow kind of customers, basically admins, to control if they want only one-way or two-way clipboard redirection. Depending if you're, for example, like I said, you could either allow only from the cloud PC to the local PC, or from the local PC to the cloud PC, or the current two-way redirection. So we are working on that. So certainly stay tuned to get more information on that. But we hope to bring this in preview soon to be able to test that. That's been highly requested for security reasons by a lot of our customers. The second things we are looking at, but will be a little bit further out in the future, is also potentially more granular control of being able to enable or disable specific redirections based on different scenarios or kind of what the user is connecting to or what they're connecting from. So we are looking also at that, but that's a little bit further out and a bit more in early investigation.
Got it. So I guess just I know that you mentioned we're investigating and that's further out, but like hypothetically, would we be able to combine the two? Basically, okay, well, we might have one way to redirection. Also, only allow it if it's a device that or that you trust.
Yeah, so that's something we're looking at, is to be able to basically tweak or modify certain redirections based on, let me call it that way, like user context. For example, if the user is coming in from a managed device versus an unmanaged device, you might have a different level of trust or what you want to allow. So you might be able to, allowing egress from the session host to the local user's machine if it's a managed device that's already under your company's kind of control or at least purview. But when they're coming in from a BYOD unmanaged device, you may want to lock down so you don't allow company information to be taken out of the session host and onto the computer's device, the user's device. So we are looking at trying to be able to more granularly control the different redirections based on context.
Got it. Yeah, sounds good. Yeah, I know that we're earlier on in identifying that work. So yeah, for folks listening, if you have feedback, have thumbs up, thumbs down. If the direction we're heading, investigating sounds great, let us know. If there's additional areas where you want us to take a look, please also let us know as we think about the work for the second half this year. So cool. Thanks, David. So let's see, we have a question from Davina. Does Windows 365 support Bluetooth pass-through? I'm getting asked this by a handful of clients, but I've not found any articles online that says it does or does not support Bluetooth pass-through. So yeah, folks can jump on. I think what Davina is asking for Bluetooth pass-through is actually, I'm not exactly sure. I'm not sure if it means like from the cloud PC pair to a local device.
That would be my guess, because I know, like, I'm on Bluetooth headphones right now, and that gets passed through audio redirection. And so I'm assuming that that's probably what the question is. Can you pair a device to a cloud PC? I don't think that one's possible.
Yeah, I don't think we have Bluetooth redirection today. So we have, I'm assuming it's similar to USB redirection, right? So today we do have the availability of USB redirection, where USB devices on the local machine can be redirected into the session, and we actually send kind of the traffic for USB back and forth. But we have not implemented a way to do the same thing with Bluetooth devices and have them kind of show up inside the session to be able to be used today. So again, if that's something that's of interest, we'd love to get that feedback. So feel free to report that. But that's not something we've gotten enough demand for, requests for. So we haven't really looked into implementing that at this point.
I think what I'm also curious on is a lot of the Bluetooth that I've noticed are usually microphone and headphones. And so like if you're using Teams, then and with the Teams optimizations, then you can select your audio, your microphone input, your audio output. I'm curious if there are other classes of Bluetooth devices that aren't microphone/speakers, because those ones we do have specific integrations with. But like if it's another class of Bluetooth device, that's what I'd be curious on to understand what you would need.
Yeah, so Davina, let us know what hardware that your customers are trying to connect and where that they're unable to. That's going to help us understand the need.
Yeah, let us know, Davina.
Thank you.
Let's see. So we have a question from Bradbury on LinkedIn, and also your casual reminder that we aren't only streaming on Tech Community, but also on YouTube and LinkedIn and Twitter. So in case any of those are more familiar than the current platform you're listening on, feel free to join us there. So anyways, back to the actual question from LinkedIn. What avenues are there in Windows 365 or AVD to control login via the AVD client/store app with 2FA? At the moment, all I am aware of are some controls around token expiration. So I have some thoughts, but also I know David has some thoughts.
Yeah, around the 2FA. So, sorry, you were asking about like how to control more kind of MFA and all that stuff, right? Then the timing of it.
It sounds like it's two things. It sounds like it says what avenues are there to control login via AVD client or store app with 2FA. And I don't know if the question is more of users can only log in from X client, or when they log in from X client, they need 2FA maybe compared to others. So maybe just.
So let me start a little bit more generic, and then feel free to specify a little bit more kind of the question. So all of the clients can be enabled to have like multi-factor authentication and two-factor authentication. Essentially, all of the client to authenticate to Windows 365 all have to get an Azure AD token to traverse the gateway. And for that, you can control two-factor authentication by setting conditional access policies or MFA policies on the Azure Virtual Desktop app. That might sound interesting, but both of the services do use a similar backend for part of it, including the connection. For example, like the gateway and the broker are common between the two services, so Azure Virtual Desktop and Windows 365. So that's why you often have to go and set the MFA policies on the Azure Virtual Desktop app. Now, if you had deployed Azure Virtual Desktop, for example, a while back, and you're now using a mix, you may see the app called Windows Virtual Desktop in your Azure AD tenant. So just something to be aware of. But anytime you set CA and MFA policies on that application, it will trigger as part of the authentication to both Windows 365 and Azure Virtual Desktop. So that's where you can go and require MFA. And you can also set conditions on it, similar as other CA policies. You could say, I want to ensure that my BYOD devices have to do MFA, let's say once an hour or once a day, but my managed devices, they need they don't have to, they need MFA, but they don't have to re-authenticate on some kind of cadence, right? So you can tailor based on the comfort level, depending on the status of the device. So.
Yeah, and I think the key point also is that the apps are the client that you use to connect to the service is I don't know if disjoint is the right word, but it's like separate from the service itself. And so the way that the user and the app authorizes to actually make the connection, it is almost entirely through Azure AD. And so that's why, David, you're mentioning the Azure AD conditional access controls. And then just more generally, we'll continue usually referring to Azure AD for a lot of the authentication and authorization, just because that's how the user and the app will essentially get access to the system. Oh, Bradbury, you followed up. Thank you very much. We're trying to secure the use of the app and force MFA. At the moment, the apps don't require 2FA on each login, as the authentication is cached for a period of time. Okay. Now I see where you're getting. Yes. And David is chuckling. So it looks like the requirement is to authenticate every single time. So yeah, David, go ahead. I know that you are looking at this.
Yeah, so let me start with what we have today, and then I'll go to what we're working on that's getting us closer to what you're asking for. So today, the main way you can request re-authentication on some cadence is, again, you go and create an Azure AD CA policy, and there's a way to enable sign-in frequency. And that will ensure the user has to have a reasonably fresh token based on the time length that you decide. Then you can have it all the way down to 60 minutes. So you can require that the user, when they launch a connection, has authenticated manually to Azure AD within the last hour. And if they have not done so, they will be re-prompted for credentials again. We are absolutely hearing from customers that 60 minutes is not quite good enough. And it either does not meet some of your key security requirement, or you just want an option that's a bit more secure. Because while single sign-on when enabled gives you a great experience and it's very seamless, it also makes it that there's a period of time where if someone was to get hold of that computer, they could technically kind of sign back in without being prompted for credentials, right? So again, that's where all these CA policies come in, and being able to tweak whether they're coming in from inside your network or managed devices or unmanaged and all that. We are actively working on reducing the time before re-authentication happens. Our first phase, we're hoping to bring it down to at least a 15-minute re-authentication. And then we're just working through the technical aspects to see how low can we bring it. And we'll see if we can bring it down safely to all the way down to every single time. Again, we're working very closely with the Azure AD team, since once again, the entire authentication process for Windows 365 is based on Azure AD. So we're working closely with them to enable, again, more granular or shorter time before you prompt for re-authentication. So absolutely work in progress, and would certainly love to hear the feedback. What is your key requirement? If is 15 enough? Is 15 minutes good enough for our phase one? Or do you actually need every single time? Or I would love to get some of your feedback.
Yeah, so yeah, thanks, David. And also thanks for the question, Bradbury. We definitely have been seeing that a lot more with customers, and we'll add you to the list. So yes, thanks for the question. We have so switching away from identity for a second, we have a question from Kushvu. I'm getting the error while configuring the Azure network connection. Okay, so Femi, probably for you. A required DSC script cannot be accessed or run during provisioning. Some PowerShell DSC scripts are executed on the Cloud PC. We were unable to either download these DSC scripts or execute them. And it says, please ensure your VNet, with the error, please ensure your VNet has unrestricted access to the required endpoints and that PowerShell is not blocked in your environment or group policy. So Femi, do you have any information on this? And
yes, I
just
can
more color to the requirement.
Yeah. So as part of during provisioning, there's some PowerShell script that we run that we execute on the customer's cloud PC. So what they need to do is that they need to ensure that the necessary URLs and ports that we have defined in our network requirements list of URLs that they need to have to allow traffic via their VNet, those URLs and ports need to be open. So I can provide, I can provide the URL to where those lists are, but they need to have that open to allow this basically to be able to execute the script, and also to be able to download as part of, because I think what is going on is that the PowerShell is blocking their environment or group policy that they've set up.
Yeah, because I guess generally, do you know what the PowerShell script portion is trying to accomplish? Like, is that, I don't think that's part of like the domain join thing. I think it's just any local configuration, right?
Yeah, I'm not particularly sure on provision, but I think for basically the PowerShell script, I think we're just executing it to be able to. I think once they provision, to be able to have their configuration correct. So that might be part of their Azure domain join, but I'm not specifically sure what details the script does. So I need to get back on that.
Yeah, because I don't know exactly how much we publish. So maybe I was just curious of which steps. But I think another question I have is, well, so I know for ANC, Femi, I know that we specifically say which domain and which OU
Yes.
Do you want for this network connection? Because from prior to GA, prior to release, customers were giving us information of, okay, well, all these devices, all these new cloud PCs, I want them to be provisioned and tied to this specific OU because I want to manage them mostly the same, but actually maybe slightly differently from my physical devices. And so maybe Donna, I'm gonna lean on you here.
Okay.
Do you know if there are ways, like at least within OUs, to change the PowerShell restrictions? Like, would that be an option? And maybe Kashru could kind of separate that out so that way they know that yes, PowerShell is being run for cloud PCs, and I'll allow or have fewer restrictions for this OU.
Yeah, you can. Brushing off my knowledge of Active Directory, it's been a while since I've delved into GPO management, but you absolutely should be able to set more of a granular policy on that OU to control that PowerShell behavior. Of course, then you need to look at where the main PowerShell policy is being set. If it's set at the root, then you need to go ahead and block inheritance. So there's all sorts of options you have in order to make that work. But yeah, that should be doable. I would also throw out, and I know it's almost a meme at this point, but I have seen misconfigured DNS actually break this, where the endpoint is trying to reach out to get to wherever we keep the scripts, and names can't be resolved. It'll also generate the same error. So, I mean, it could be DNS. Just as a fun tidbit, always check DNS because it's always
always check DNS. Yes. Okay. No, that's good to know. Because I know that with this solution in general, we always guide our customers to be secure. And so if there's options to have this, have an OU that is allows the scripts specifically for cloud PCs, but not for everyone else or for other devices. That's one way we can help. Make sure that folks are still staying secure, but able to deploy within Windows 365. Okay, cool. Thank you both. A question from John. We have some older Windows 365 machines that have Intel processors, and the more recent builds are AMD. Is there a way to choose? Has MS gone all AMD now for Windows 365 cloud PCs? We also have a user installing Intel Fortran compiler, stating the install barks about AMD being installed. So John, that is a very good question. Whenever we hear from customers about, what kind of SKUs do you use in Azure? Are you using, specific versions of like disks or NICs or anything like that? Basically, for Windows 365, what we guarantee is the vCPU, RAM, and storage configuration. And so we don't necessarily, we're not tied down to a single VM SKU. That would be a single point of failure, which we don't want. We have a lot of flexibility in our system, but we always guarantee that you get your vCPU, RAM, and OS storage as your license describes it. So there is not really a predetermined way of us or you choosing the Intel or AMD versions of SKUs. We essentially are dynamic and try using what's available. How do we make sure that as a service, if you have 100 cloud PCs and another customer has 100 cloud PCs, that we make sure that all of them get provisioned in a very timely manner up to your license. So long story short, there's no option right now that you would have, and we just build our system to be flexible and dynamic to choose what's available. I think that's unless other folks have stuff to add.
Well, to add to that, if you do need that functionality where you can determine the granular configuration of your endpoint, that's where AVD comes in. And we're all one big happy family now. We're not fighting over users. So by all means, use AVD for that. Depending on if that app, how many folks you have using that. Potentially, you could use remote app to be able to publish that to the folks that you need. And so in this type of particular case, it almost is a better together story than an either or.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Donna. I was very focused on the question, but you bring a really good point in that anytime you need a very specific SKU, if you do need specific disk or network card configuration, VM scaling. We know, gonna bring it back up. We know a lot of customers are asking for GPUs, and we hear GPUs, we hear you. We're trying to work on it. In the meantime, Azure Virtual Desktop is a great way to go create a GPU-based VM in your Azure subscription. Granted, you have an Azure subscription and you can manage it a bit. So yes, Donna, definitely echoing you. For any precise requirements that you need for for users, then AVD might be a good option just because you are 100% in control of that. Mm-hmm. So that was a great point, Donna. I glossed over that.
Thank you.
Okay, from Twitter, is it possible for users to unlock a Cloud PC session with passwordless credentials like FIDO and Windows Hello for Business? David, I see that you're ready. You're ready. Please chime in.
I'll answer in kind of two parts. I would say first, I'd say no. So they did the remote lock screen in Windows still does not support FIDO keys. We don't have a kind of full FIDO redirection, and we also can't basically redirect biometrics and things like that. So to a large extent, the remote lock screen does not allow that. Now, that's in part why we changed the default behavior or the behavior of the new single sign-on protocol. So definitely, if you get a chance, I'd say, please go ahead and give single sign-on a try. So what we do for the single sign-on protocol, once you enable it for multiple reasons, is when the session actually gets locked. So either the user locked it or you have a policy, for example, to enable the lock screen after 15 minutes, which we see a lot from customers. Instead of locking the session, we do now start disconnecting the session with the new single sign-on protocol. And the user will get a message that says, hey, your session was disconnected because your session was locked. And then you will soon see in the client, we are working on an update. So today they have to dismiss the dialog and then go back and find the client and relaunch the connection, which is quite tedious. So one of the remaining items before we declare general availability is we're adding an easy reconnect button on that dialog. So when session locks, session disconnects, they get a dialog that says, hey, section was disconnected because it was locked. Whenever they're ready, they can click reconnect. So a couple of nice things with that. That will reinitiate the new connection. So based on your policies and all that, if they've got, they may get a great single sign-on experience and not be prompted for credentials and just connect back in after kind of like a few seconds of like the standard reconnection time, they'll be right back in their connection. If you do enable some reauthentication policies, because the user has to go through Azure AD authentication, Azure AD will realize that you were requesting reauthentication and will prompt the user for authentication again, where they'll be able to use FIDO keys, Windows Hello, and all credential types supported by Azure AD. And that's true across all of our clients. So all the clients will have a kind of a simple disconnect experience, and when the user's ready, they can reconnect, authenticate if needed using all the MFA two-factor passwordless authentication that's available to them to get back in the session. So again, part of the discussion reason is one, it allows full passwordless authentication. It allows reevaluating CA and MFA policies. For example, if the user has been inactive for a long period and you had a policy to disconnect them, you're guaranteed it is the right kind of the right user coding back in. Or at least we'll reevaluate all the CA and MFA policies you have in place to ensure it meets your security requirements.
Got it. Yeah. Thanks, David. Yeah, I definitely echo with testing out the single sign-on today, because yeah, you'll experience exactly that behavior that you're looking for. You will see that it'll disconnect because you can't re-enter that right away. But yeah, thanks for the update, David, and thanks for the information on the reconnect. I know that I've played with some early builds of that, and it is very convenient. So I'm excited for customers to see that. Okay, so from Twitter, we have another question. Can you add more than one alternate ANC, Azure Network Connection, in case one has issues? How do you tell the service which order to connect to? So Femi, I'm going to defer to you here. Any insight?
Yes, you can add more than one. But what we do is that during your provisioning process, we let you select the specific ANC deployment location you want. But what we do is that we also automatically, based on where you're setting up your ANC and your configuration, we also automatically recommend and pick the fallover ANC for you. So basically, let's say you were setting up your cloud PC in, let's say, US West, right? And we know that based on capacity, right, there's not going to be enough capacity for US West, right? We would suggest maybe US is for you as an alternative ANC where you can set up. So you have an option once you set up your ANC to select alternative ANC, but we do our best to recommend the best, most healthy Azure network connection location for you, so that you don't have to kind of think about it. So it's more of like a failover option that we offer you, but it automatically just helps you provision your NES requests for as part of your provisioning policy. So the answer is yes, you can have more than one alternative ANC, but we do our best to make sure that the alternative ANC that has been recommended to you is something that you can use, so that when you provision your cloud PC, you don't have issues with capacity or not being able to provision your cloud PC in that specific location that you want.
And is there a priority order to that one? So you mentioned there's the primary, and then there's that second one that you add. How many can you add in a provisioning policy?
I think today we let you. I think we provide. So we have. So based on, I think the priority, let's say West US 2 was one priority 1, West US 3 priority 3. I think we let you select up to either 2 or 3. I'm not sure. I probably need to check, but I think it's just based on your first priority will be the one you pick. Then the second priority will be the closest we feel that there's going to be capacity at that specific region, and we provide you that option. But I think you can have more than 2. Not sure. Maybe you can have more, but I'm not sure in terms of the option we provide to you. I know we let you select your primary one, then you can select 2 extra ones. But after that, I'm not sure if we let you select like 5 or 6 at once.
Okay, cool. Yeah, that sounds good. Yeah, I'd love to learn more. If you find that information,
Sure.
that 2 or 3, let us know.
Sure.
But yeah, thanks for the question, anonymous from Twitter. Let's see. I have any other questions in the queue here?
No, I've kind of become a fan of that whole alternate ANC configuration, and where it's really shined is I had customers when they first started out with Windows 365. They said, okay, we're gonna need 100 licenses, so they built a small subnet, and then management says, okay, we need a ton more of those because that's awesome. Okay, now do we need to build like a /16 subnet to accommodate growth? What do we do? And being able to have those multiple ANCs tied to individual subnets has allowed them to expand without having to try to migrate to a different subnet or go through re-provisioning. So bravo to the team that's helped a lot of our more established customers deal with the unexpected awesome growth of Windows 365.
Yeah, that's a really awesome feedback, Donna. I hadn't realized it in terms of an expansion scenario of not having to force existing users to re-provision. So that's really cool. I had not thought about that. I feel like
That's pretty cool stuff.
yeah, I mean, I think that another area that I know David is working on, where we're trying to make sure that we're not, forcing customers to have to re-provision users that they've had on cloud PCs, for 6 months or so, like 6 months to a year, etc. Is with a single sign-on, because a single sign-on, just like a lot of the provisioning policy settings, those typically apply at the time of creating the cloud PC. And we introduced the single sign-on little checkbox back in December, and that only applies for new cloud PCs. Like that's just the way that right now that's constructed. But we've heard from a lot of you that, hey, I love single sign-on, but I'm not going to tell a user to blast away their device and create a new one. And so that's another area where Dave and I have been have been huddling and thinking of how do we make sure that we can provide the value of single sign-on, but in a consistent way that folks can continue using the cloud PC they have today and not have to rebuild it. Like, because you install all these apps, you install, Git and Visual Studio, the line of business apps, kind of, from company portal, from online, and having people reset that all up, that's a pain. So I know David's working on that. I don't know if I have anything to share yet, but it is that that is a prereq for our, for the GA, right?
Yeah, that's again one of the things that is in line for us to do before generally available, and we'll try to make sure we add it to the existing public preview, so we make sure that everything is working properly before we officially declare general availability for the feature itself. So definitely stay tuned. Very soon, we're hoping to announce the availability to enable applying an updated provisioning policy to existing cloud PCs, and that will include enabling single sign-on, but we'll also look at other settings that could be applied to existing hosts once the provisioning policy has changed. So stay tuned for that.
Great. Yeah. So, like it's posted here. I think those are most of the questions that we had for today. So continue engaging with us, asking questions in the forum. We will be back next month, per usual. So we'll also add the short link for next month's Ask Microsoft Anything for Windows 365. So yes, thanks again for everyone. Thanks for the awesome questions. Really enjoyed some of the challenging ones, and also some future looking ones where we got some good feedback. So appreciate that a lot. Any other reminders, folks? Use your Frontline cloud PCs, test the single sign-on, use the FQDN tags, all the good stuff. All right. Well, thank everyone. Have a great day, afternoon, evening, wherever you are, and we'll see you next month for the Windows 365 Ask Microsoft Anything.
Bye.
Bye.